this is the second panel of the night. We're going to be talking a little bit about sort of like local opportunities and the Liverpool scene and that kind of stuff. We've got two more amazing panellists for you. I've got Cath Hurley of Future Yard and James Booton of Booton Music. To get sort of started, do you want to just sort of introduce yourselves and what you do?
So as you said, my name's James. I run a music magazine in the Northwest called Booton Music. And then outside of that, I've done bits of marketing for like music festivals, music events, and with the music magazine, we put on live shows as well.
Hi, I feel like I know most people in this room. Hello, I didn't see you at the back either. My name's Cath Hurley. I work at a music venue in Birkenhead called Future Yards that hopefully doesn't need an introduction, I hope, at this point. We've done something horribly wrong if it does, but it's in Birkenhead and it's Boss, and I run a talent development program there called Propeller, and bringing with me like loads of different music industry knowledge from lots of different jobs that I've done over lots and lots of years.
Yeah, so you obviously both work on projects that are based in Liverpool, but James, you live in Manchester right now, right?
Yeah, so I've just moved to Manchester for work, yeah.
So I wanted to ask, like, sort of what made you want to, because you've moved to Manchester, but Booton Music stayed really like grounded in the Liverpool scene. What's made you sort of want to keep it grounded here?
So kind of when I started it, it just ended up being a Merseyside-based thing based off me because that's where I was living. But I've always wanted it to be a Northwest-focused thing because growing up on the Wirral, I always found that a lot of things were quite like city-centric. So everything was focused on Liverpool, not the kind of surrounding areas. So with the magazine, I really wanted to focus it on the Northwest. So obviously you've got Liverpool and Manchester, but then you've got all those kind of nooks and crannies in between. So I wanted to make sure that those places are represented as well. So I think just making it a bit broader to the Northwest kind of helped include those kinds of people.
Yeah, and Cath, you've sort of worked everywhere and done everything in a way. So it's like, I was like, what do you think in particular sort of led you to doing what you're doing now? Because you've worked in so many amazing, cool jobs and stuff.
I think that I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I feel like the music industry is quite hard to get into. So I was doing jobs, and then I'd meet somebody that had a better job, and then I was like, I want to go with that. And then I think there was a common thread throughout all of those different jobs that I did, which was working with emerging talent and supporting new artists. And I think when I'm making it sound like I'm about like 80. And I'm still like, I'm 42 basically. So I've worked in music since I was in my early 20s. And I think even in that very short amount of time, the industry changes so vastly and very, very quickly. And I feel like emerging artists that aren't represented by management, by labels or anything like that, I feel like there's a lot of, you need to do this, you need to do that. And you're never going to, succeed unless you're on social media all of the time, or unless you work with this person, or unless you put yourself in front of these people. And it's all bollocks. Like, there's so many different routes through the industry, and there's so many different ways of being a musician or being an artist or being a band. And I think when you work with lots of different record labels, lots of different artists, and lots of different brilliant music industry professionals, and also some really shit ones as well, you just kind of collect all of that. And I think I really wanted some form of vehicle, I guess, to kind of do that on a big scale, as support emerging artists with trying to cut through the noise. I knew that I wanted to work in some form of like talent development, and I think, when Future Yard started becoming something that was not just on the blackboard at Bido Lito, RIP, that was my piece of the puzzle. That was the obvious thing for me, was that I had a real opportunity to support local talent in a part of the world which, there's not a huge amount of opportunity and isn't always kind of talked about. So, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously you, if I'm right, you moved back to Liverpool before Future Yard sort of came about. What sort of, and having sort of worked in London where a lot of the industry is obviously based, what do you think made you want to come back to Liverpool?
It wasn't for career reasons at all. It was more to support family members. So I was working at Rough Trade Records in London 8 years ago. Fucking hell, I've been here for so long. Sorry, I know this has been recorded.
No, it's fine.
8 years ago, I was working at Rough Trade, and and I was moving up to support my family, and my big worry when I was looking at lots of opportunities of what to do, and there wasn't really anything that I did want to do up here. So I got a job in like not the music industry and used it as an opportunity to kind of look very, very objectively at what the challenges were and also what the opportunities were of being a musician in Liverpool and the surrounding areas. And I feel like I did that for a good couple of years of just like looking to see what it was like. Before then, I was like, right, where can I add value? What can I do? And I think I was like a little bit reluctant at first to be some form of like role model or spokesperson or something like that. But I think what I saw was a load of people that were being gatekeepers who weren't necessarily helping people, but were putting themselves on some form of stage themselves, on some form of pedestal, where it was just like, you need to impress me, otherwise you're not going to do anything. And then I saw that that was the thing that was really, really important, is that we need to just make sure there's lots of positive people around who are willing to share all of the different things that they know and kind of bring lots of decent people up with them. And I guess reluctantly at first was that person, and now I don't care. I'm just like, yeah, like I'll be that person.
Yeah. So we're going to talk in this one, as I said, about sort of local opportunities and the Liverpool scene. But I kind of want to start with like, I kind of want to ask you both, like, how would you, it's a bit of a broad question, but how would you sort of describe Liverpool's music scene at the moment?
I mean, exciting, as it has been for a long time. We were actually chatting just outside before, a few of us, about how in, say, the last 10 years since I've been working in the scene in Liverpool, just how we've seen some kind of ebbs and flows and different tastes. Like, when I was first going out to gigs and things, there was a big psych scene in Liverpool. Now we're seeing like a lot of jazz nights opening up. Jazz is really coming through, which is exciting. Whereas over in Manchester, I was saying that the psych has kind of gone up and the jazz isn't really there at the moment. So like, it's kind of interesting to see those ebbs and flows. But I think in terms of artists, it's really exciting at the moment. And I think as well, people like yourself, really, that are, you know, young creatives that are coming through, that are starting their own projects. There's so many of them going on at the moment. It's fantastic to see that, like, there obviously is some kind of framework there with places like Future Yard and schemes like Propeller that are inspiring people like yourself that are, you know, just come out of uni, or they're, you know, just come out of college and they want to do something in music. They've got a passion for it. There's projects out there that are inspiring them to believe in themselves and go and take that passion and put it towards something they really care about. So it's really nice to see more of those projects, really.
That's such a gorgeous answer.
You're welcome.
I think the Liverpool music scene, to me, feels like the perfect training ground in a way, because I do think it gets overlooked quite a lot, and I think you've got to use that to your advantage. Like, we're not a Manchester or a Leeds where we're surrounded by other places that come to it. You know, if you think about, like, when I was working in London, I'd look at the artists that I was working with who were touring. It'd always be like Liverpool and Newcastle that sold last, and it's because you kind of really want to be there. Like, you've got to really want to be in Liverpool in order to go and see bands and artists, and mostly when it's touring artists, they're local people that will go to those shows because you're not surrounded by lots of cities. We're on the edge. And I think when you're coming through that scene as somebody that's local, I think you've got to use that to your advantage and really kind of like use it as an opportunity to hone what it is that you do in a safe environment. I think it's weirdly siloed in the sense that I think there's lots of little scenes and lots of lovely things that are happening, but they're not very connected. And I'd love to see more connectivity and more collaboration within that, because we are a small city. And one of the things that does me head in a little bit, I think, is the reliance on us being a music city and the Beatles and now Eurovision. And it's just like, how does that help everybody that's in the room now? Like, how does the fact that we're music tourism is the cavern, do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So I'd like to see that that we put the spotlight on the stuff that's happening now, more than like if I have to go to an event and I hear in the first thing that's spoken about the city is the Beatles, then I'm going to pull my hair out. Like, it just happened so much. So I think there's real opportunity. I think that's probably what I'd like to put like a positive lens on everything and just be like, there's loads of really, really great stuff happening. There's loads of like really creative people. And I think like all three of us really are probably very privileged in the sense that we speak and spend time with a lot of those people, and we get the opportunity to lift them up and to support them. And I think there's some really, really exciting things, and it is amazing. But I do think it's like that perfect training ground to really, really care about what it is that you're putting out into the world before you put it out there, and before then you take it to other cities and other countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that you've both touched on that I really love about being here is the fact that it is a small enough place where you can know pretty much everyone, and you can sort of be, I know you said that it can feel a little bit disconnected, but I think at the same time, we're not sort of far away from all being connected. That's not something where, like in London, for example, everything sort of exists in sort of more micro scenes and areas and genres and stuff. It's nice that sort of people can sort of gather together and sort of know each other, and that it's small enough that you can do that, even when you sort of factor in those surrounding areas as well. And that's something that Future Yard's been so great with, is that Over the Water can feel more involved in. I think weirdly, it's like, on the one hand, it's giving Birkenhead more of a sense of musical identity, but also I feel like it's connecting it to the city a bit more, because I think people sort of, there's something that I've definitely experienced where people sort of realise, oh, it's actually a really short train journey, and it's actually like really easy to get to, and there's all this sort of amazing stuff going on. So I think it's nice that we're in a small enough place where sort of everyone can be together in a sense. I want to sort of, you touched on like some of the challenges. What do you think of some of the other sort of issues or challenges facing Liverpool as a sort of scene at the moment?
I need to think about that one. I need to think of, I think like, just personally as someone so I grew up on the Wirral, but then was in Liverpool and then like flicked between Liverpool and Manchester a lot. So I've kind of come back to Liverpool a few times. And I think in terms of challenges, I guess a lot of the challenges are the same across the country with cities like Liverpool. Obviously, venues is always one that's a struggle. Cath will know more than me about that one, but just like kind of getting that support and getting more of that framework in that I said about like with schemes like Propeller across like different venues in the city is really important. And I think some of the connection between like areas like the Wirral, I think like you say there, it's really nice that things like Future Yard are connecting that, but when you're from a bit more of a rural location, that can be a bit of a barrier. So getting kind of those other regions more involved in stuff that's happening within the city, and more collaboration between the city centre and the regions outside of it, I think that would be a nice way forward to just kind of connect everyone a bit more. Because we were speaking outside again about Greater Manchester and how that functions for the city, and like the collaboration that goes on between the very city centre of Manchester and the regions surrounding it is so good, and it doesn't feel like you have to like travel really far. There's not that mental barrier of travelling to these regions, where in Liverpool it feels like, because it is such a tight-knit community here, it's like if you want to step 10 minutes outside of the city centre, that's a real slog, that's a real journey. So I feel like one of the little barriers is that kind of connection between those other areas.
Yeah, and I think like, I mean, I'm not a Scouser, so maybe I'm not the person to say this, but like I think that whole idea of are you a real Scouser or not kind of plays into that as well. Like, really, if we want to sort of be a more like connected music scene, does it matter if you have purple bins, like that sort of thing? Like, yeah, Cath, what do you sort of, any thoughts on that, and sort of like what would you sort of fix about Liverpool as a scene? Giving you all the power here.
I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, my outlook is more looking at stuff and trying to see the opportunity in it rather than seeing it as a barrier. But I think one of the things that does me head in about Liverpool is that when I'm in Leeds or like Sheffield or Manchester or anywhere that's like a uni city, like Liverpool's got so many unis and colleges. Like in other cities, those students go to gigs, whereas I feel like in Liverpool, students come here because there's clubs. And, you know, like, you look at what shit Indie Disco's done is absolutely incredible, and the fact that, like, how many people they get in that building every week. Why the fuck don't those people go to gigs? Because they're not going to gigs. Like, we're fighting against venue closures, and one of the biggest issues is that we just, like, maybe it's, like, fallout from the pandemic, cost of living crisis, whatever you want. But people do have disposable income that they're not spending on gig tickets. Like, without a doubt, you could put a show on for free and you'd still struggle to fill the room. So I think that is probably what I see is the biggest challenge is that we just don't have people that go to gigs anymore. And I don't know whether it is like, maybe it is a COVID thing where we're a bit more choosy about what we do and we're a bit more reluctant to be in a room with other people, or whether our social batteries are all just absolutely exhausted after whatever. But I'd wish that more people went to shows. And I'm saying that from somebody who runs a music venue as well.
Yeah, no, I don't know the solution, but I feel the same frustration.
Well, you're a promoter as well.
I know, and it's so frustrating. Like you say, that with things like Shindy, and you see that like that audience.
How do we get them in front of live music?
I don't know. I'm trying.
Like, does anyone else know?
Because the equivalent, again, like in Manchester, you've got 42s, which does the same kind of stuff that Shindy does. And you go in and you see those people, and they are gig goers. Mm-hmm. They are people that maybe before going to 42s, they've been to a gig, and they are engaging with that side. But it does feel like there's a bit of a divide between the clubbing nightlife and the live music nightlife.
Yeah, I think when you're in Leeds, for example, there could be like an all-dayer at the Booton, and there could be an all-dayer that has the same audience at the Belgrave, and both of them will sell out. Like, if you had a gig, not even an all-dayer, and there was a gig in this, in somewhere else in Liverpool, and it was a similar audience, you'd have the audience for both of those gigs. Like, make it make sense. Like, what is going on is, like, live music not valued as much as it used to be or whatever, but I feel like that is probably an issue that's happening all over the country, but I feel like it's slightly more concentrated in Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it maybe doesn't help. It does help and it doesn't help that Liverpool does have this reputation of, like, best night out in the city and that kind of stuff, and that does put the emphasis on those, like, club nights a little bit. I sometimes wonder if, like, the way gigs are promoted and stuff sometimes feels a little bit sort of insular, like, oh, you've got to know about this to sort of be part of this side of music, whereas if we could frame...
But that's what music is, though. It's subcultures. Like, that's the way that music has always been, and that's the beautiful thing about it. Like, there should be an element of wanting to seek things out and finding something and discovering it, and it's yours for a bit. Like, how many people have got a favourite band that they absolutely hated it when everybody else found out about them? Like, that's a universal thing. It's just like, you do kind of want that exclusive element. That's always been there. And that kind of should remain, I think. I don't think we should lose that. That's feeling of a bit of exclusivity that you've kind of landed on something that other people haven't.
I think the way I'm seeing it is maybe sort of, there are some gigs that I think could sort of promote themselves as a little bit more welcoming to if you don't know that. So it's sort of, you still can have that element of sort of, you're the ones in the know, you're the ones that know about this amazing band, but sort of having that outward facing, like making sure that people sort of feel welcome and stuff. But it's a really tricky thing to sort of work out exactly how to do, I think.
You either want to go and watch a band or you don't. And I think, the way that society is, I think lots of venues and ourselves included, we are trying to make people feel welcome and we are trying to make people feel safe, and it's not lip service. It's not us just going, oh, come to Future Yard, we'll look after you. Like, everyone's trained within an inch of their lives to look after people, like, and that's rolled out across the country. But I do think that, like, you either want to go and watch a band or you don't.
I want to move on. I kind of want to move on to like
move on to something more positive, please.
So yeah, I kind of want to talk about like there's a lot of people sort of from, as we were saying about being a university city, from September. A lot of sort of students come into the city, and a lot of them are music students as well. One of the great things that I think we do have is the uni of has like a popular music course that isn't just classical stuff. John Moores, I believe, has similar. Lipper's obviously there. Hope has like production courses and stuff. If you're someone who's like new to the city, or just someone who has lived here all your life but is new to music, how do you sort of get into a local scene?
I would say kind of a lot of the things that you touched on in the last panel, just kind of speaking to as many people as possible, getting involved as many things as possible. It can be very daunting when you come to a new city. If you're coming from far away and you come and you don't know anyone, and obviously the whole like uni experience can be very overwhelming as well. So trying to get involved in something outside of that can be scary at first, especially if if you're an anxious person. It's very difficult to just go out there and try and put yourself out there. But I think very quickly you'll realise how many other people are in the exact same boat as you, and how many people are positive and want to connect with you and want a safe space, just like you do, to kind of share in their passion, form a community. So I think just try and get involved in as many things as you can. I think with the universities themselves, they'll have amazing projects that they're putting on, and you can collaborate with other people in your university. You know, if there's, for example, if there's a writing course and there's a music course, that's perfect collaboration. Like, that's a way to work together. And then through that, you form a little mini community, and you start to realise that, like I said, there's many people out there that you can join up with, and you won't be on your own very quickly.
Yeah.
I think you've got to do what's right within the realms of your own social anxiety.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you can be told to kind of get out there and meet everybody. The idea of that makes me feel ill, to be honest.
Same.
I think that's sometimes that makes you not do anything. So I think it's kind of like looking at routes in. I think if you move into a new city, the great thing is, like, think about where you're going to get a job, that you're already in those environments. Like, if you're interested in music, there's loads of, you know, bars that have venues themselves, and, you know, like, get a hospitality job somewhere where the music is the lifeblood of that place, which should be quite easy in Liverpool, surely. But I think when it comes to actually getting involved in the scene itself, is if you want something from it, you've got to give something to it, right? So, like, I always think about, like, using you as an example and all of the different things that you do. If somebody wants to be covered in your magazine, or, like, wants you to book them for a show, like, they need to read your magazine and go to your shows, like, surely. Like, so I think there's an element of that, is that find out what's going on and then support it. And I think the more you go to places and the more you do things, the more people will recognise you, and particularly the people that are doing it themselves or they're running it. You'll become known to them because you buy gig tickets, because you do spend that disposable income on doing stuff. And I think also just the internet as well. Like, I think Discord got brought up in the last panel discussion, and I think sometimes you can inhabit a community virtually, get comfortable before you then inhabit it in real life, can be a nice kind of lead in as well. And obviously that's a lot easier now more than ever to kind of just, you know, I used to find it really weird when I used to work in PR, and I'd meet a lot of people on the internet first, like on Twitter back then, and everybody would have like big social media personas, and then you'd meet them and they were really, really fucking awkward. And you're just like, where's that gone? That's hilarious. And I think everyone embraces that a little bit more as well. But I think sometimes seeking communities out online, even if you are looking to get part of a local scene, is still very much possible. Especially, like, there's so many bands that have got Discord communities and stuff that there does feel like a kind of regional element to that as well, like a bit of a location thing as well.
I'd really echo what you said about engaging with people before you necessarily reach out to them to try and get something from them. Because, like, for example, with the magazine, like, if someone was to get in contact, say an artist, and they say, I picked up your magazine, read this interview, really loved it, I'd love to get involved. That's so, like, will get our attention so much more than someone just saying, here's our music, please listen to it. And I imagine the same at Future Yard. If you're saying, I went to this show at Future Yard, it was amazing, I loved it so much, and then you ask about how to get involved in things, it's just like a nicer kind of symbiotic way of, like, working with each other, rather than being so salesy and upfront and just be like, please help me out. So I think definitely engaging with these places is really important. And as well, what you said about anxiety and things and how hard it can be, I think also just don't put so much pressure on yourself as well. Absolutely. Like, there's people that might arrive in a city and in the first month they've been to every single event possible, they've met everyone, but also there's people that just naturally be here for years and they just slowly meet people just through life. You don't have to put so much pressure on yourself and treat every night out or every trip that you take during the day as like a networking opportunity, because that can become very tiring very quickly.
Just make friends with confident people.
That's the solution. I mean, it's interesting because obviously both of you sort of have met a lot of people sort of in the scene, and that will have involved some, like, networking. Do you think that, it's difficult to say, but do you think that's sort of networking anxiety side, do you think that's something that just comes with practice, or that you've sort of ever really gotten over, or is it just something that would you know what I mean? Like, is it just something that always sits there, or is it something that you think you can sort of get better at?
Networking's a horrible, horrible word, and the fact that you've said it 3 times in that question then made me like recoil a little bit. Not everything. It's just being nice, isn't it? It's just socialising.
Yeah, I feel like the idea of, say, coming to an event like this, and like obviously these kind of things can turn out to be like a networking opportunity.
Stop it!
A networking opportunity.
It's worse when you put it in inverted
I'm going to see how many
commas.
times I can get it into this next bit. But you can just come here and just enjoy yourself. Don't have that kind of idea of meeting people, making connections as like the end goal. Just have it as that you're here for a nice night, and like you will eventually, over the course of being involved in live events, being involved in different things in the music scene, you just do meet people and you just chat, and like you say, you just meet nice people that you end up knowing each other for a long time, becoming friends and helping each other. You don't necessarily have to walk up to everyone with a firm handshake and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I'm trying to get to is like that. I think I've been at things sometimes where like it's like
You're good at it though.
oh, I'm
Like,
not good at it. I'm
but
terrible
you
at it.
are. Like,
No, do you want to know something? Do you want to know a secret, right? I
Tell us your secret,
started a
Sally.
podcast because I was so bad at talking to people that I was like, it's easier to ask them for an interview than it is to do that
that's
in
the
the first
thing,
place.
though. It is having a reason. Like, it is having a reason to speak to somebody is really, really key. Right. It's going beyond it is going beyond socialising, isn't it? Like, I find it really hard going to gigs on my own, or just going to gigs in general sometimes, or just going out and socialising. I find it really, really difficult. But if I've got a reason to be there, I find it really, really easy. Like, if I've got a purpose. So when I first moved to Liverpool and I didn't have that purpose of, like, the fact I was representing bands or, like, working for a music venue, like, I would be, like, talking myself, like, into going out. And, like, my social anxiety manifests in a way where I'm just like, oh, no one wants me to be there. Where's Kathy? She's such a kind of, like, gagging in. But if I've got a reason to be somewhere, that doesn't even enter into my head. And I think what you've just said about, like, setting up the podcast, obviously the podcast is absolutely boss, but the fact that you've done that because you've identified that, that's really, really key. And I guess for us, it's very, very different that you've got a publication, I've got a music venue, you've got a podcast. We've all got reasons to be in rooms. And what's really, really hard is like fledgling bands and artists where there's 3 of us, there's a shit ton of views. Like, and again, it's like cutting through the noise, but I just think networking's horrible because it feels really forced. And like, all we want is to speak to people that we share values with and we've got things in common with. And I think lead with that is just like, I find it difficult sometimes with bands and artists when I don't know what they want from me. So if you go to something and then they kind of tell you about their project and you're just like, oh, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't book bands at Future Yard. I very much don't do any of that. But sometimes I'm like, what do you want out of this interaction? Because it's forced, it's not natural. So I think there's a struggle there sometimes. It's just like, is networking right in that moment in time? Like, if you don't know what you want to get out of it, just meet people and be sound.
That's going in
Is
the
that
clip,
useful?
definitely.
Is
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
useful in any way, shape, or form?
Definitely.
Like, that's really shit advice.
That's
Don't network, just be sound. Oh, God.
You were mentioning sort of like
I'm making myself anxious.
mentioning like when bands get in touch with you or something and you feel like you don't know sort of what they're looking for. I kind of want to talk to you, James, on like what are some of the, as someone who probably gets pitched to quite a lot, sort of what are you looking for in a pitch, but also like what are you what is it like those red flags that you see and you're like, ah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of what we've been saying, like a bit of a personal touch is always going to make more of an impact than just the kind of stock blank email. So if someone says, like I said, if they've discovered the magazine, they've read it before and they really liked an interview, or they say, oh, this is artist that I really like, or I'm friends with, they were featured in it and they recommended you. Just something that, again, doesn't come across as so kind of transactional and is just more of like, oh, it's lovely to meet you, I really love what you do. And then just like dropping in, by the way, if you want to feature us as well. It's like, it always just feels like a lot nicer. But then in terms of like, if you're talking like a proper official pitch, I think like it does always help when people have all their stuff together in one place. Having like an EPK together is just really useful for us to see where they're at, what they've got coming up, see who they are as people, and just like be able to just access that information really easily, rather than sometimes someone will just like send an Instagram DM saying, here's our new tune, but it's like, I don't know who you are, I don't know why you're messaging me, but it's like, if they just provide a bit more context, that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that even if it's not extensive, that little bit of research is key as well, just because I was speaking to Ella earlier, who does Where Are the Girl Bands. She was saying they are Northwest based, featuring female artists, and they got an artist from California being like, I've got a new song out, do you want to listen to it? And it's sort of like, well, if you've done like the initial...
Was it a lad as well?
I think it was a female artist, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, even just doing that, like, and it doesn't even have to be like extensive digging through everything. Even just doing that, like, what is this person? What do they sort of have? What opportunity do they hold that I might want? But even if it's not in that, you said about not being in that sort of transactional way, but just knowing like what the conversation might be about, even is so important.
And as you say, just like that little bit of like digging on them, it shows that you do actually care about what you're sending to them. It shows that it's not just kind of a flippant email you've sent out. It's like you do care, you want to work with them. It's something that's important to you. So I think it just shows they really care.
Yeah, someone I spoke to called it the spray and pray, where you just have like a template and you send it to like 100 different people and you just like see if anything sticks, kind of thing.
I've not heard that, but I'm definitely going to use that. Spray and pray.
That's horrible.
But it is better than the throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
Like spray and praise. That's pretty genius. That I'm having there.
Obviously, you worked in PR before. Is there, this is a stupid question, but is there like a secret sauce or like anything that, can't believe I said secret sauce. Is there like a trick that, I guess I'm trying to say, like, is there like a trick that people are missing or something in like pitching, or is it just?
No. As somebody who did professional PRing for like nearly 5 years, I think, it's fucking soulless. I'm not going to lie. Like, even like, it's the same for PRs as it is for bands. Is you could get something as well that you think that because you know the journalists, you know like all of their taste, you know that what they're like a good PR does anyway. So when you like meet a band or like when you hear a song, you're instantly like, this is the thing about being a PR as well. You go to a gig and you're just like, I know who's gonna like this. Like it just changes. You just have that lens on everything. So you'll know like who you think will like it and who you think will cover it and what you think they'll write about it. And then you'll send it out and then that doesn't happen and you're just like, what? Like, it's so weird. But it is that thing where it's just, you'll have days and days and days where no one replies to your emails. And no one wants a phone call. Like, that's like old school PR. And you'll have no one replies to your emails, but then you'll have like a run where just like everything's just flying. It's just such a weird job. And I really, really feel for bands. But I want to kind of put this point across massively that getting a PR on board isn't a magic wand whatsoever. Like, all you're doing when you pay for PR, if you're like, still building your audience up, is you're buying time. You're paying somebody to do a service so that you don't have to do it yourself. And there's so much that you can do that a PR can yourself, basically. It's just laborious and it's not for the emotionally weak to just get ignored. But also as well, the wins are huge. And it's the same for PR as well, is that when something connects with a particular writer and they write something beautiful about it, and it could be that it's a really like small blog that no one's heard about, or or it could be somebody from a broadsheet and everything in between. But like when somebody takes the time out of their busy schedule to write something lovely about something that you've made or something that you're promoting, it's just like you kind of forget the days where you don't get a reply. But it's a hard job. It's horrible. I couldn't do it. Like, I really hated it. Like, I did it because that was what the jobs were. And then I went and did a better job. Sorry if there's anyone that does PR in the room. It's a really great job and you should be really proud of yourself. But
I think what you're saying there as well about that kind of those days when you'll have a whole week when no one's getting back to you and you get so disheartened with it. But I would say to artists, like, try and not get so disheartened, because even if you've contacted loads of people and no one's got back to you, doesn't mean they haven't read it and cared about it. a lot of people will read it, store it in their brain, and then 3 months' time, they might come back to that and get in touch. And like a conversation you were having in the last panel about social media, I was thinking like, you know, how many times will you see a post on Instagram and you do register it in your head and you do care about it, but you don't like it because you just can't be bothered? It's kind of like that. It's like, because they're so busy and might not be relevant to them today, they end up just not replying to it, but it might become very relevant to them in a few months' time. So just keep that in mind and try not get too disheartened.